One day after U.S. President Trump unveiled new restrictions on travel and business in Cuba, reversing some Obama-era Cuba policies, Cubans are still optimistic.
We will continue the fight until the end. The Americans have helped the economy somewhat, but it isn't everything because we get tourists from many countries.
Omara has been serving tourists in her private restaurant for the last 5 years. She believes U.S. citizens are the ones who have more to lose.
I have no worries because we have had so many years of embargoes and things. The only thing the president is doing is taking away the supposed freedoms the American people have.
The new policy says Americans will no longer be able to plan their own Cuba trip under a people-to-people exchange license. Those who go as part of an educational tour will be subject to strict new rules and audits. President Trump says this is to ensure that U.S. visitor money is not going towards the Cuban military. But one Cuban economist says small Cuban businesses have already had a tradition of supplying tourism services.
U.S. tourists visit the private restaurants. They never eat at government-owned restaurants. Many who come use the old nostalgic private cars as transportation. This is already happening.
In the first 5 months of 2017, the number of visitors to Cuba from the U.S. was roughly the same number as for most of 2016. But Everleni Perez says this is still just a fraction of the 4 million tourists who visited the island overall.
U.S. tourism has been important for Cuba, not decisive. The 285,000 tourists that came in 2016 is only 5% of the tourism that comes to Cuba. We are not talking about Canada, which is 40%.
In a written statement published on Friday night, the Cuban government called President Trump's announcement a step back in relations, but reiterated their willingness to continue a respectful and cooperative dialogue. Whether or not U.S. citizens will continue to visit the island under tighter restrictions will only be seen in the future. But today, what is clear is the Cuban people's unwavering sense of perseverance. Michelle Begues, CGTN, Havana.